Welcome to Be Truly Heard with me, coach and voice expert Anne Leatherland. If you're a woman in business looking to speak with authority, warmth and authenticity, this is the podcast for you. We'll explore valuable personal growth strategies alongside vocal skills, so you can overcome confidence barriers and communicate what's inside. Your voice matters. It's time to be truly heard. Hello and welcome to this episode of Be Truly Heard with me, your host, Anne Leatherland. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Gill, a powerful speaker, mentor, and educator who helps individuals and teams live and work in true alignment. With a mission rooted in empathy, inclusion, and curiosity, Gill empowers people to own their voice, embrace their worth, and lead authentically. Her TEDx talk, The Surprising Stigma of Sobriety, has reached over 250,000 viewers, inspiring others to step into their own truth. Whether on stage, in workshops, or mentoring one-to-one, Gill brings courage, compassion, and possibility to every conversation. Welcome, Gill.
Well, thank you. And that was actually really lovely to listen to you introduce me like that. Courage, compassion, and possibility. I'm really feeling very good about this now. Thank you, Anne.
Well, that's how I found you to be when I met you at Simply Speak and Shine, which we'll be talking a bit more about later, won't we?
Lovely.
But
Lovely.
I knew when I met you that we were on the same page in many ways. And I feel that there's a real connection between us. We do slightly different things, but there's an awful lot in common. So you're a perfect guest for this podcast, and I'm sure that our listeners will learn a lot from you. So tell us a bit about yourself first, Gill, and why you do what you do.
Yeah, well, lovely. Thank you. Well, first of all, I will absolutely agree with what you said. The minute I met you, I knew that we had lots in common, and there was that instant connection and instant passion for helping people to find their voice and be comfortable in their own skin. That's a big question, is it? Tell us about yourself and what you do. But I would actually approach the answer to that question from the perspective of, I work with people to be comfortable in their own skin, because for years and years and years, and I would actually say maybe decades, I wasn't really comfortable in mine. I was living an incongruent life because I was drinking. So what I do is I do help people to become comfortable in their own skin, to show up in the world as them and to share their voice. And I do that in two contexts. One is, I've mentioned the word drinking. So one of the contexts is I am an addiction therapist. I'm a sobriety coach. So I work predominantly with women to help them become alcohol free if that is what they wish to do, if that is their choice and they're ready to embrace a life without alcohol and to find out who they are, to find out who their voice is when they're on the other side of the bottle, so to speak. And the other context is I'm a speaker coach. And this is where you and I are very synonymous and share perspectives around showing up in the world. I help people to confidently embrace their own voice and get their message out to the world. So when their message is important and when they really understand that their message is important, that they can own that and they feel, I'm ready to share that, not just through the written word or through writing a blog, or actually to saying words out loud and to owning their own self and owning their presence on perhaps a stage or on a podcast like this and sharing their voice and feeling really congruent and aligned about that.
I love that. And I've seen the result of your work at the Simply Speak and Shine event I was at a couple of months ago with you. And just to get women up there and speaking out and giving them that platform is such a powerful thing, which is, again, why I was so drawn to everything you do at Speak and Shine. So that's wonderful. Now, you've just told us about the alcohol side of things. But you chose alcohol freedom in a way, didn't you? And that must have shifted the messages that you were giving yourself, the inner voice, if you like. And in return the voice that others heard. What was the first sign or the first signs that your alignment or congruence with yourself had returned?
Yeah, well, that's really interesting. I thought you were going to ask the question the other way around, actually. What was the sign that your congruence, that you were incongruent? But what a lovely way to approach this, that my congruence had returned. And I think it was when, and it sounds so fundamental, but it's actually so important as well. I think I knew that my congruence and alignment had returned when I started to like myself again. And because that was my pivot point for thinking, I need to take some decisions in terms of getting my life back on track, was the fact that I didn't like myself. And when you're living your life and you don't like yourself and you're showing up every day, just doing the day-to-day stuff in a body and a mind, when you're not really comfortable with yourself, and worse than that, you don't like who you are and who you are allowing yourself to become, that's not a pleasant place to be. So when I started to feel aligned again, that I could wake up in the morning just feeling me and feeling really happy being me, then that, of course, would influence all of my actions and my decisions and my choices every day. And for me, it took getting rid of the coping mechanism. For me, that was alcohol. I was very much out of kilter with my nervous system. I didn't know that at the time. Intellectually, I knew that, that I was messing with my brain chemistry because my coping mechanism of choice at the time was alcohol, and that completely messes your brain chemistry and your nervous system. Intellectually, I knew that, but I didn't realize that I was living my life just with my nervous system streaming full of cortisol and adrenaline and all sorts of other stuff, and completely unbalanced. I was living my life in that whole fight, flight, freeze, fawn, everything that we know about the nervous system. And I'm going to add another F to that as well. I'd learned to function with that. So I'd normalized the fight and flight and freeze and fawn under the auspices of drinking. I'd normalized that as a way to live. So to answer your question, I knew that I was back in alignment when all those Fs, I wouldn't even use the word functioning. I was living. And that whole sense of aliveness really meant that I was aligned.
I love that, the sense of aliveness.
Yeah.
And presumably you were in a very high pressured situation, were you, when you slipped into that in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I hadn't really realised is that I'd normalised a level of drinking that throughout my late 20s and 30s, 40s, and then into my 50s, that it kind of moved from the party girl kind of stage, and almost, I'm not giving anybody permission here, but almost the rite of passage when you're at university and you're trying all sorts of stuff, and maybe it's helping you with your social ineptness or whatever it might be. As I was learning to adult in the world, alcohol certainly lubricated the way there. But I'd moved through that kind of socialization and the social acceptance of drinking through to using it as a prop, to using it as an escape. I had lots going on. Look, lots of people have lots going on and they don't turn to drink, or they don't turn to excessive drinking, but I did. So I was a classic. When I came to the end of my drinking part of my life, I was absolutely under pressure from top and bottom, a classic sandwich generation person, elderly parents. My mum had Parkinson's. I was traveling to Manchester every other week to go and help with her because my brother and sister were more on tap. We tried to avoid a care home. So my poor dad was at the end of his tether with it. We did manage no care home. We cared for her at home with some care help. But emotionally, it was killing me. I was in London. She was up in Staffordshire at the time. My mother-in-law, God bless her, she was in a wheelchair. She was disabled. My father-in-law died suddenly. She came to live with us, which is, despite the accent, I'm Scottish. It's very much the Scottish way, the 3-generation household. At the same time, I had 3 children, a high-pressure job, then coming out of the job and trying to go into freelance work. The whole thing, yada, yada, yada. A lot of women in their 40s and 50s, have this going on, trying to balance all the plates, be superwoman, show up for your children as the best mother. But by goodness, I didn't, because I was diluting that with a bottle of Sauvignon Blanc every night. It became my way of thinking that I was resting and relaxing that way. So you know nervous system, and I was not resting and digesting in the sort of true spirit of the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. I thought I was resting, but what I was doing was I was depressing my brain's capability and depressing myself by drinking. And it made me live a life of incongruence. And it took me a long while, years, before I recognized that.
Yeah. So incongruence in the sense that we're showing up, but we're not doing it in the way that we'd like to. We're not in alignment with ourselves and who we really are, because we're
Absolutely.
using this as a sort of coping mechanism.
Yes, absolutely.
You had a very successful TED talk on this, didn't you? The stigma of sobriety.
Yeah.
And what do you feel that taught you about the shame side of the story? Did you experience shame, and how does it land with other people? Can you help them with that?
Yeah, it's so interesting. There are so many questions within that. And I think if we go right back to the beginning, and this is one of the reasons why I now do more of the speaker coaching, so people can share what matters to them, because it almost wasn't until I became alcohol free that I realized I had something to stand for and something that mattered and I wanted to share. It was indeed some of those taboo topics like shame, because I felt if I'm feeling shame and I'm sitting in my shame feeling really lonely, then surely, and thinking it's only me and that's shameful in itself, then surely by sharing my voice, I will be helping others. And it's kind of interesting, isn't it, that? So what happened, and this was, when you apply for a TED Talks isn't just about sharing your story, it's about sharing some form of twist on something. And my TED Talk, the premise around it was the fact that I couldn't believe that after I'd made this incredible health decision and I'd just live a life of authenticity and alignment and congruence, what we've talked about so far, I couldn't believe that I felt more ashamed in my sobriety than when I was drinking. And it's because of all the stigma around drinking and because people would question my sobriety. So, but you didn't have a problem with drinking, Gill. Well, what? Yeah, surely you can have just one. Oh, come on. Don't be so boring. Have one. What are you being so judgmental and prudish about? It was really interesting. I discovered so many different attitudes about drinking and sobriety, but also my own attitude. I would come out with, and it was almost at a subconscious level, I might come out with something like, even to myself, but I wasn't that bad. I only drank wine. I didn't drink vodka. And in that statement, that's so loaded. It's almost as if those people who drank vodka to cope, or because they like the taste, were worse than me. I was almost shaming them in my very justification of my wine drinking. So my TED Talk was about all of the discovery around my own biases, if you like, my own learning about what I'd previously run through my brain as justifying why it was okay to drink. And then when I became alcohol free and chose this healthier life for me, no judgment to anyone who drinks. My husband still has a whiskey or a gin every night. That's absolutely fine. He's a take it or leave it drinker. He doesn't need to have it. I wasn't a take it or leave it drinker. But I learned so much about the shame I felt in my own behavior, but also my own biases that I was holding. So I really had to hold a mirror up to myself to learn about that. That's what my TED Talk was really about, was about tackling subjects that are often lonely subjects, like shame, like lying. A lot of people who drink, they're addicted to something. They hide it. They're secretive. There's some lying. And these things just aren't talked about. And I think it's really important that if you're able to share your story in the spirit of helping others feel less lonely, and it's not just them, and then be able to provide perhaps some tips to be able to work around that and to feel okay with yourself, then surely sharing your voice is a good thing. Absolutely. And that led me to really want to do more of the work, not just helping other people become alcohol free, but to help them share their voice if something really mattered to them that they felt they could help get their message out in the world that would help and enable others to live a better life.
That's fantastic. What a wonderful message, and what a wonderful thing to do. Which brings us neatly on to Speak and Shine, I think. So tell us a bit about that and how that came about between yourself and Kia. Yeah.
Yeah, so I work with an amazing lady called Kia Adair, who you also had the pleasure of meeting. And I'd met Kia twice. We both happened to live in West London, and we'd met at a networking meeting probably about 3 years ago. You know how sometimes you just get a sense for someone, and I just really liked her. And that was both ways. I was presenting at this networking meeting, and so she'd seen me speak. I think I was talking about boundaries or something, or I can't remember the topic, but she'd seen me speak and she'd like me. We'd met for a coffee. There was no business exchange at this. Kia was and is an amazing brand photographer. She has some incredible clients, amazing galleries. And what had happened was that I got this phone call out of the blue last September. So it's about a year ago now. Kia wanted to speak to me because she'd had an experience whereby she decided that doing public speaking might be additive to her authority as a brand photographer. She was going to talk about life through the lens and just really from a marketing perspective, looking at promoting herself. She was applying for a gig, a speaking gig, got halfway through the application form, and it said, upload your speaker reel, upload your photograph and your speaking testimonials. And she thought, hang on a moment, I'm wanting to speak. I haven't done it before from a professional perspective. She'd spoken on a couple of podcasts. She'd spoken on a small stage, but hadn't got any photography. She thought there must be many, many people who are really experts in their field who now want to share their voice and perhaps use it for marketing purposes for their business, or alternatively are ready to share the message and help others, but they don't know where to start. They're in a chicken and egg. They all of a sudden apply to a conference, and the conference wants proof that they're a speaker. So there's a real chicken and egg here, a catch-22 of how can you start? You've got something really good to say, and yet you don't have the proof. So she put it out on LinkedIn saying, anybody else feel this? And it exploded. Loads of people said, yeah, this is really interesting. So she phoned me up. She thought, I can't do this because I'm not a speaker coach. I haven't worked with other people. I'm not a professional speaker. I know you speak. I know you've done the TED Talk. I know you used to work in learning and development years ago, and you used to teach, speaking skills, communication skills, facilitation skills. Are you up for having a bit of an experiment? And so Speak and Shine emerged from a bit of an experiment. And the whole essence, we didn't want to hire the corner of the Georgian Dragon pub and a microphone and a mate with an iPhone and pretend to talk. We thought, no, we don't want to just grab snippets for proof to upload on an application form. We want to provide an immersive experience for women who are emerging voices who are ready to share their voice, but they don't know where to go next, or they're really scared and nervous and think, oh, I'm not quite sure I'm ready. We wanted to provide a really safe, loving, and I use that word very deliberately, a loving, very held environment for women who had something to say. And we could work with them, we could walk alongside them, we could create a beautiful environment where, yes, they could get all of those assets and resources, they could get photographs of them on stage, they could get footage for proof, they could get testimonials, but they could also have a fabulous experience of stepping into their own voice and stepping into their confidence and sharing their message.
That's absolutely wonderful. And that's what I experienced when I came along to the day that you put on, and it immediately resonated with me because my aims are somewhat the same from a different point of view, looking at the voice from a technical point of view a bit more perhaps, but also from a lot of the same things that you're doing too. That's why I've been delighted to have you today, Gill, just to speak to us on this. And if people want to know more about you and your mentoring or simply Speak and Shine, where should they look?
Well, I think the best place is to look on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn a couple of times a week. And, when energy allows, maybe even 5 times a week, when I've got something to say, I say it. But all of the links for Speak and Shine and my work are in there as well. So LinkedIn's the best place. Yeah.
Perfect. So I'll make sure that that's in the programme notes as well. And I'm sure I could just speak to you all day. That's gone so quickly, hasn't it? But thank you so much for being a wonderful guest, and best of luck with Simply Speak and Shine. And no doubt I'll meet you there in the future.
Well, I can't wait for that, to meet you face to face again, Anne. Thank you for inviting me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
You're very welcome. And that's all for this week, folks. I'll see you in the next one, which is in a couple of weeks' time. Take care until then. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to Be Truly Heard. If something landed with you today, share it with a friend or leave a review. It really helps more women to find their voice. Want to go deeper? Join my email list for exclusive tips, resources, and invitations to events. You'll find the link in the show notes. Until next time, remember, your voice is powerful. Let's make sure it's truly heard.